Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 32 here at the Tavern, presented by HeroTaku.com. Now, I want to go ahead and talk to you guys about some recent news that I've heard in regard to the release of Power Rangers Time Force on DVD. Now, this is going to cover a number of things to the release itself, an issue on censorship. So bear with me here as I go through basically all the things I've learned and all the things I have issues with, and I'll do my best to mark out everything in a logical order. Again, I'm just kind of going off the cuff right here. I'm really reacting to news I heard yesterday and some stuff that I've learned today, but we'll go through all this together. First of all, again, Power Rangers Time Force is being released on DVD by the Shout Factory in its entirety. However, part of the problem seems to be that a lot of what's going to be on the DVD is the post-9/11 censored versions of these episodes. Meaning that there are going to be DVDs in here that have edited versions to them, less violence, dialogue changed, and things of that nature. Because you see, only the third or fourth episode of Time Force aired the week of September 11th. So Saban and Fox Kids and everybody since then has gone to edit probably not every episode, but up to maybe half of the episodes from that season for censorship reasons, which I'll get into here later. Now, the most common example that you'll see is like in Clash for Control Part 1 when the Q-Rex is attacking the city. Some of the explosions are scaled back to where the Q-Rex is just running menacingly. A lot of destruction and explosions are taken out later as he's crashing through buildings towards he's just stomping on the ground, things of that nature. There's a shot of the Time Shadow, which is on top of of not the Twin Towers, but two twin-looking buildings, which is actually an amazing shot. Which you're seeing here on the screen. So it's really cool, but they had to take that out for whatever reason. And of course, in the episode Ransik Lives, which is most infamous, is that Ransik pretty much gives a terrorist speech on television to the citizens of Silver Hills. But after its initial airing, mainly when Jetix got a hold of it, his entire dialogue is dubbed over with music. You can't even hear what he is saying. It's complete music throughout. And I'll have a clip here in the comments to show you guys the video of what I'm specifically talking about if you're not sure. But the bottom line of it is that these censors were made. That's what's primarily being shown on television now. However, I did notice a few of the Netflix streaming episodes of Time Force were not edited, specifically Ransik Lives, and I'll get into a few more things regarding that here shortly. But what I had heard yesterday is somebody had done a review who had gotten a early version of the DVD set, basically saying that these episodes were edited and that they are the censored versions, basically. And that's what we're getting on DVD. Now, at the time that I heard this, I was really upset because why is it that 12 years after the fact, we still have to have censored versions of these episodes? That didn't make sense to me. Granted, in the way I view things, it didn't necessarily make sense at the time to have to edit this because Power Rangers is so far removed from those real-life events that I didn't see a need to go ahead and do this. But it was the thing to do at the time to remove the Twin Towers from movies, to make edits in movies. I mean, there's an episode of Spider-Man the Animated Series, which, again, that takes place in New York City, but there's a scene where Kraven the Hunter and the Punisher track down the Man-Spider to the World Trade Center, and that entire sequence of them explaining where they are and how they got there and so forth, completely edited out. The famous Spider-Man movie trailer, which had a helicopter stuck between the Twin Towers, that was completely removed. There was even discussion at one point of changing the name of the Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, because it was too similar to the Twin Towers. So all this crazy censorship was going around about 2001. So when I read this, I felt it was very unusual, let me use that word, that 12 years after we are still censoring things from that period. I mean, heck, you can't even get the trailer to Spider-Man anymore unless you go on YouTube. It's not in the DVDs, it's not been re-edited into the movie or anything like that. The ripple effect that those events caused are still with us, and I don't necessarily understand why. And I'm not going to get into a political argument right here. What my main issue is going to be about censorship and the release of these DVDs. Because again, when I read this, why are they doing this? Why do they have these edited versions out? Why can't we get the pre-edited versions? I mean, yeah, it doesn't mean much that, you know, Circuit's line was changed from Trade Center to Quarry or something like that, or they had to change these shots. But it's just, to me, that's why I get extended DVDs for films, is that I like the extended cut because that's what the director, that's what the writer, and everybody wanted you to actually see. But they were edited for whatever reason, for time constraints and so forth. And there's a lot of that in other films, you know, where scenes are censored for television use, you know, but you can always have the DVDs have the uncut version or the extended version. And I always love the uncut versions. I mean, I love 40-Year-Old Virgin, and I think the uncut version is funnier. So, you know, that's just how I view it. So I don't see why we have to have a censored version of Time Force. So I'm all steamed about this whole issue and really upset about it. That's what I was going to go ahead and rant about you guys tonight, pardon me, is the whole idea of these censored DVDs. Now, I was sent a message today because I was informing a couple of people that's what I was going to go ahead and do. And they sent me basically somebody who worked on the DVDs, and he kind of came out with some information regarding what had happened. And basically, as I'm understanding the situation, is that the Shout Factory, who is producing the DVDs, received the censored versions. They didn't necessarily have control on what versions they got. That being said, it also seems to be that there is an issue with locating the masters, that the pre-9/11 censored versions cannot be found, is what it sounds like to me. That they are out somewhere and they couldn't get a hold of them. Now, I mean, is it the case that the masters aren't available? Is Saban not releasing them? I'm not exactly sure. There seems to be some debate on that. And if you guys know a definite answer, definitely leave in the comments. Let's clear this up. But let's talk about this for a second. If it's simply a matter of they can't find the masters, then I understand. If all you have is the censored 9/11 censored versions, then go ahead. If that's what you got, let's go ahead and get it. It's better than skipping Time Force altogether. But if it is a matter of Saban withholding the episodes or the masters or whatever and stuff, then we get into a more fickle issue. But I'm not going to get into that. So basically what I'm going to go ahead and say is I don't like that they're releasing the censored episodes, but again, if that's all that exists, then we're going to have to go ahead and deal with it. But I am told that at least the Rancic part where he gives his terrorist speech, it has been re-edited to a point where his dialogue is still there. Again, it's not a master, which I'm not sure exactly how this is working, because again, if you go watch that episode on Netflix, it's the unedited version. There's no music. It's straight up how I remember it when it was broadcast. But for some reason, they don't have that available for the DVD, so I don't even know what's going on. What does Netflix have the Shout Factory can't get? But that's kind of beside the point now, because now I have all the facts and the information. It makes some sense right here. But I just don't agree with the censorship edits. And this is kind of what I want to get into a general thing about. And I want to put some feelers out there and figure out what my fan base kind of thinks about this. Because, you know, in America, we have to deal with censorship of television programs, whether we want to or not. Because it seems that there are people out there who assume that we as fans must not be exposed to certain things. The thing is that there are groups out there saying we need to tone down the violence, we need to tone down the sex, for properties that these people are not fans of. Now, granted, most of this is parent groups talking about violence in television for what their children watch. The problem I have with that is, first of all, my parents never had a problem with the violence in Power Rangers. My school never had a problem with the violence in Power Rangers. It was Power Rangers. It was popular. It was cool. And it was never an issue when I was a kid. I had never heard of it. Did I hear of parents that, didn't let their kids watch Power Rangers because it was too violent? Yeah. I mean, I heard somebody, I had a friend that couldn't read Animorphs because his parents thought it was anti-God or something. I mean, go figure on any of that. But the thing is that you have these kids who enjoy these shows. Their parents don't like them. So instead of saying, yeah, don't watch these shows, which is what a good parent should be doing, it's basically, oh no, we're going to tell these people we don't like this show to either A, get canceled, or B, alter it. And that's precisely what happened with Lord Zed. Basically, parents complained that Zed was too evil and they had to go ahead and tone him down. And that really pisses me off. Because, here's the thing. I don't really have an understanding of how fan input has changed Power Rangers. But I have a great understanding of how parent groups and parents change Power Rangers. Basically, the show, at one point or another, has been dictated by its non-target audience. They're basically saying it's basically the parents saying to the show, this is what you need to do, and the children or the fans have no say in it. Because if this was 1994 and they asked me, hey, Barkeep, what do you think of Power Rangers right here? Zed too evil? I'd say he's not evil enough. Make him cooler. Make him more evil and all that. But they don't listen to us. They'll listen to the parents who think it's too violent, that think it's a problem. And this, I don't understand why this is a big thing in this country where parent groups are wanting to censor other people's television programs or people who think they're working in the best interest of the fan bases. When you're a creator of the show and you let people who are not your fans or the people who are not watching your show dictate what should happen, then you have a problem. Now, I know a lot of you are going to get into what's a kid's show. They have the right to protect their children. Again, don't watch the show. Don't call in and complain to it because the show's not meant for you. I mean, I'm 27 right now, and I love Power Rangers. Now, if I call in and say, hey, you guys need to change whatever and stuff, that's me as a fan saying, this is what I want to see out of my show. This is how I can make it better. But I'm not going to go in there saying, I'm the parent of a 3-year-old, and I don't think this is appropriate. You need to change this or whatever their threat typically is. I don't know. I've never been part of a parent group. I'm not a parent at the moment. But I just don't understand that mentality of letting somebody else dictate this. Now, when we get into situations like 9/11, now that is a little bit different, but I think there should be a time limit on that. And let me go ahead and explain. Because I can understand, it just happened, and like 24 just came out that year. It came out, I would say, within a month of 9/11. And there was a scene in the first episode where a plane was supposed to go ahead and explode. Well, in the broadcast version, the plane does explode, but you don't see it. They cut that completely. So something that close and that's similar to those events, I can definitely understand at the time. But again, here we are 12 years later. Now, I haven't followed 24 since the second season, so I don't know what's happened and what's different or anything new with it. And please answer this for me, but does the DVD set of the first season have the plane explode, or is it the edited version? And if it is the edited version, is it a case that they don't have the masters, which I don't understand why they wouldn't, or did they feel they had to go ahead and have the censored version in there? If it's a timely matter, make it timely for the time that it happened. But for future periods and for future generations, let's say, don't edit that stuff out. And let's go back to Power Rangers for a second. Look at the first season of Power Rangers, and let's take a look at a later episode that was done in the version 2. Now, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the episode at the moment, but it's where the Rangers fight the Frankenstein monster, and Dragonzord in battle mode basically punctures a hole in its chest, and we get a nice POV through the hole, as the Frankenstein monster falls down. That was an awesome shot. But apparently that was far too violent for the 2010 re-edit. So if you actually watch the 2010 re-edit, it's actually taken out completely. I think it's covered by comic book sparks, or it's just shortened by a few seconds, however that is. Now, I don't get adding like that. What has changed in 12 years that makes us think we wouldn't want to go ahead and see that? Because typically, if something is shown on television at one point and it's 12 years later, or excuse me, 20 years later, it's usually acceptable by that point. I mean, that's why, 20, 30 years ago, you didn't have that many people swearing on television shows and saying the word penis and all that. But now Family Guy does it all the time. And look at South Park and what they're doing. At some point, it becomes socially acceptable to do that on television. And I do believe South Park dealt with that issue at one point. But I don't see a need to go back and edit that scene in a 20-year-old episode of Power Rangers, particularly a really good episode. It was a great fight, and I do remember seeing that as a kid. I'm like, that is awesome, because first time I remember the Rangers were able to destroy something without cutting it with a sword or blowing up with an Ultra Zord or vaporizing it, which, frankly, I think vaporizing is far more gruesome than drilling a hole into a monster. But whatever, it didn't make any sense to me when I saw the edit, and it doesn't make any sense to me now. I mean, there need to be a statute of limitations on censorship, and I kind of think that there is, because what works in 2001, what works in 2010, does not work in 2013, does not work in 2020. Things change, sensibilities change, and I really think that edits like this should not be... Let me put it this way. As a fan of Power Rangers, I don't want an edited Power Rangers. I don't want censorship in there. I don't want somebody who's looking out for my best interest to change the product that I love. That's ultimately what I'm trying to go ahead and say. Now let's go back to the children's argument, because I know that's what a lot of you are going to go ahead and say. Power Rangers is meant for kids and you have to censor it for kids. I don't necessarily believe that, because again, it should be up to the parent on what's acceptable. If I had a child right now and he or she were 6 years old, like I was when Power Rangers first started, then yeah, I would show those episodes, because I personally don't feel there's anything wrong with it. If my wife feels that there's a problem, well, that's when we get together and talk about it and decide what's best for our children. What we don't do is complain to the show and say, oh, you drilled a hole through this guy's chest, you need to change something about that. You need to edit so we never see something like that again. Again, that's the last thing you should be doing as a parent, as anybody. And again, the show should be dictated to the fans. So I know I'm talking about two broad things right here, and again, I'm trying to keep it condensed, but this is another one of those issues where I'm really fueled about this, basically. Probably not as much as the Bandai rant, but it's up there, I will go ahead and say that. Again, it's just, let the fans dictate what they want to go ahead and see. And again, the 2000, I have no idea why we had to have the revision 2010 Power Rangers anyway. Frankly, it'd been better if we just taken a year off. But to censor it in that way and to change things that they did just cheapens the overall product. And it not only talks down to the fans of the series, such as myself, but it does talk down to the children as well. Here, this was good enough in 1993, but now you need comic book style art and pretty colors, and we don't think you're smart enough to tell that the Black Mastodon belongs to the Black Ranger, so we're going to put Black Ranger Zord at the bottom of the screen. Now that's a completely different issue, and I might talk about the revision stuff later on. But again, I wanted to go ahead and talk about censorship. And again, if they can't find the masters, perfect, whatever. I'll go ahead and move on from that. But the fact that they added it anyway really bothered me. The fact that that seems to be the only thing available. I mean, what did they do with the masters? I mean, I've never worked in television before. I know people who have, and I know the different processes that go on, but I just can't imagine they say, okay, well, here's this terrorist threat from the first episode. We need to re-edit it. and then let's just toss the master or hide the master away in a vault forever. I mean, heck, that's what Disney's doing with Song of the South, is it's sitting in a vault somewhere and they're not going to release it. Don't know why exactly, but that's a completely different thing to go ahead and talk about. But I do want to raise this question. And maybe this will get you guys debating and thinking and talking, which is really what I want to go ahead and do here, is I want people to kind of think about this. A lot of the things we have to go ahead and do in Power Rangers when we bring it over from Super Sentai has to be added in the first place for our American sensibility, whatever that is. I'm curious why there isn't a lot of edits in Japan. What is different about Japan as a whole that says sex is acceptable, blood is acceptable, violence is acceptable, all this stuff is acceptable that's not acceptable in America? Now, I studied Japanese history. I'm currently studying about Japanese movies and Japanese novels and all that, but I'm nowhere near an expert on the matter. And I've talked to my professor on this matter, and he's married to a Japanese woman. He's lived in Japan. He knows the culture inside and out, but he really can't give me a straightforward answer other than dive into a history lesson that goes all the way back to the Meiji period, or really, in a lot of cases, it goes all the way back to Amaterasu. So I have no idea exactly what he's trying to go ahead and tell me. But I do find it odd that Super Sentai, which is geared towards children, as I'm told, has these dark themes, has blood, violence, the death of people on screen. I mean, heck, Ryo's entire family was taken out in an episode of Geki Ranger. That was never brought over in Jungle Fury, and I guarantee if they tried to show on television here, people would get all up in arms about it. How dare we be exposed to the real world? I don't know. I mean, again, what is it in Japan that allows them to do this? And consider this as well. Look at a lot of actresses from Sentai that played the villains. Like the girl who played the villain in Ginga Man, the girl who played the villain in Mega Ranger, and Go Onger. I mean, the girl from Go Onger, before she was in Go Onger, was like a porn star in Japan, went on the Go Onger, and then she went touring with the G3 Princess thing. Now, do you really think that in America something like that would go ahead and fly? I mean, if Evelyn Lynn tried to go ahead and get a role on Power Rangers, and, she got casted, which would be awesome, some parent group out there is going to be like, you can't have a porn star on Power Rangers? To which I reply, why not? She's not taking off her clothes in this. She's just playing a ranger or a villain. But if in Japan, Hitomi Tanaka gets hired to go ahead and play a villain in Super Sentai, everybody's cool with it. I mean, I've never heard of anything where parent groups have protested against what's in Sentai. And when you actually think about it, I've actually seen some earlier Sentai stuff from the 70s and 80s. That stuff was just as harsh and just as dark. If anything, it has lightened up a little bit since then. It's a little bit more fun than it probably was in the 70s and 80s. But we still, it's been consistent pretty much for over 30 years now. 35 years. So I'm just really curious on why it's acceptable for Japanese children but not for American children, so much that these edits have to go ahead and take place. And again, I know it's got to be something cultural, but I wish I could peg down exactly what it is that says, yeah, it's acceptable to show blood here, but over in America, it's not acceptable to show blood unless it's green or something like that. Just a lot of weird things. So these Time Force edits, the censorship versions, really got me thinking about this and really kind of got me into it because it just seems like it's all connected in my mind. That why is it even censored when it's on DVD, what calls for censorship and stuff like that. It's just a really confusing subject to me, especially as an adult. I mean, as a kid, you don't realize these things, but then you're an adult and you're like, they took that out? They did this? Well, why did they do that exactly? And I actually been watching the well, Raptor got me back into a little bit more of Pokemon and all that kind of stuff. So I've been kind of on a Pokemon kick. I've been playing White on emulator and all that kind of stuff. And I've been watching the videos that Sway, Juario, and Linkara were doing about the movies and all that. And they talk about censorship as well. Mainly the 4Kids is the devil, which it pretty much is. But it doesn't make sense why certain things were added, like the first Pokemon movie, which had an entire sequence removed because 4Kids thought it was too heavy for the audience. Now, to that I say, maybe. It was very thought-provoking, at least what I had seen. But, again, it's how many years since that movie was made? What was that, 98, something like that? And, here it is, 2013. So, why isn't there a version of that film available with that scene put back in there? Why did, because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it would seem to me that when you are dubbing anime as opposed to dubbing live action, you can show everything in anime and just dub it in there. But for some reason, there are edits made to that as well for American audiences, because apparently the Japanese can get it, but we in America can't. And Nostalgia Critic point out the lesbian relationship on Sailor Moon and all that. Just all these different things are acceptable in one culture, but not acceptable in ours. But I think as an American culture, we are intelligent enough, mature enough, and responsible enough to have those without it getting to us and being a problem. Because, I was in high school when, my sophomore year of high school when September 11th happened. Watching the Q-Rex destroy Silver Hills, in my brain at the time, would not compute those two things as being, on the same level, as being equal to each other, to where I'm going to watch this and I'm going to get upset. Now, are there people that are going to be upset? Yeah, there are going to be people upset, but just don't watch it. That's the only thing I can go ahead and say. Because I would imagine that, again, those people who are watching it, you have the power to turn off the television. And I'm not making light of your situation. Let me make that clear. If that stuff really bothered you, then I apologize and all that. But just don't watch it. But also to that, don't have somebody in a corporate office somewhere saying, well, we can't show this, so we're just not going to go ahead and do it because we think it might hurt people or offend people. Let things offend people every now and then. That's how you draw up controversy. That's how you get dialogues and get people talking about things. And again, what does it hurt to even have that? And then again, to have it 13 years, 12, 13 years later. I mean, what does it hurt now that we see Ranzik's terrorist speech? What does it hurt that we see the Q-Rex blow up a city? What does it hurt to see the Time Shadow over two buildings, which, again, are not the Twin Towers, and it was also a hologram. It wasn't even real. It was a hologram. I just don't get this. Again, maybe I'm not in the right mindset. Maybe I've never been through any of that kind of stuff. I mean, things faze me. I get emotional about things, but I don't understand why it's got to be something that lasts forever. Because here's the thing. If we never find the Masters to Time Force, all anybody's ever going to see are these censored edits. And in a historical context, they'll say, yeah, it was edited because of 9/11, but why didn't they show the full version after a certain time? It's kind of like, I guess this would be the best analogy for it, is that if in America, you're living during the Second World War and Pearl Harbor just got bombed, I can understand maybe American television at the time, which probably wasn't as big. Well, I don't even know what television was back in the 40s, so please excuse me for my ignorance on that. But like if you were going to the movies and all that, and it was a movie about Hawaii, like taking a trip in Hawaii, I can understand maybe editing that at the time or taking it out of circulation for a little bit, but enough time passes to where you can show that again, and it's not a problem, because if somebody were to tell me right now that there is a film from 1941 about Hawaii that was really popular and it was filmed at Pearl Harbor and all that, but then the film was taken out of circulation after the attacks, and now in 2013 they still don't show that film, it's not available for DVD release or wide distribution and all that, I would be like, why? hasn't enough time passed to where that becomes acceptable again? And what makes it unacceptable? I mean, I do remember, and I wish I could remember the name of what I was watching, but I was watching something on television back in 2001 that took place in New York. And I think it was a film from the 80s or 90s, but it had the Twin Towers digitally removed from the scene, from the skyline. A movie that at that point was maybe 10, 15 years old, if not more, with an edit to current events. They're essentially rewriting history in that point, which I find is unacceptable as well. You know, because, hey, Ninja Turtles, the first movie, opens up with a shot of the Twin Towers. I mean, if there's a DVD copy or a television edit floating out there with that opening scene with them missing, consider the film came out in 1990, I would really have a problem with that. Again, these are all just my opinions. This is just me kind of fueled on a little bit of rage. And again, let me make myself perfectly clear before a flame war starts in the comments. I am not belittling people's problems with 9/11. I am not belittling 9/11 and the impact that it had. Heck, I'm working on a project right now in film school that has to deal with 9/11, so I'm fully aware of the facts, and I, was watching it live on television. I've been there. I know what the situation is. The point I've been trying to make this whole time, and I hope it's clear enough to everyone to where they can understand, is that censorship should not be a forever thing. It should be a timely thing based on whatever reason. Whether, again, you need to maybe pull that episode or movie for a little bit, but eventually it should be made available. It should be available for the masses, for historical reasons, for entertainment reasons, and ultimately, censorship should be left up to the fans, if ever, should not let other fan bases dictate those actions. And again, just a general question about Japan, American culture, and why things have to be edited to come over here. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm trying to go ahead and get across. Again, I don't mean to offend. I just want to give you guys my opinion on this and what I think. I look forward to seeing the Time Force DVDs. Hopefully I can afford the entire $600 set come December. Knock on wood for that. But in any case, I actually hope more they find the masters one day and we have the unedited versions. And I really hope that, there are no more censored issues of Power Rangers. I mean, if we have, some other event that happens, whether that be a school shooting or war or anything like that, I don't want to see media edited just because it may be insensitive. Because the best media offends people. That's something my professors have been trying to tell me since getting into film school, is that it's going to offend somebody, but you write what you feel that you want to see, that you want to go ahead and say. Don't let them stifle your voice just because it offends some people. And I will say this, guys, I'm going to have a video by December here of my student film. I'm directing a film this semester, and my film is a little controversial to some people. I didn't have a problem with it. I had a story I wanted to tell. I will post it for you guys to go ahead and view, but I'm not censoring anything in my story or my script because it may offend some people. I'll leave it at that right now, and you guys will see the film once it's completed in a couple of months here, and you can be a judge of that. Now, this is not a plug for my film. I'm just using this as an example. But in any case, let's see what happens going forward. Again, I'm not as mad as I was now that I know that there was a reason for what is going on here with the Time Force DVDs. I hope to go ahead and buy them here in the near future as well. And I look forward to the other Power Ranger releases because gotta have them all is all I can think about. But I want to thank you guys for listening here tonight. Let me know what your opinions are and your thoughts are. Again, I don't know why I have to continue to stress this, but please be civil about it. Please be understanding. Don't start a flame war. I don't want to have to deal with all that crap, okay? Let's just talk about this in an open form like adults, like the adults we are, okay? Fair enough? All right. Well, you guys have yourself a good evening. Again, thanks for listening, and the tavern is now closed.